Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. I didn't expect it. Honestly, I didn't even know what to make of it when I first saw the text. It was late, just past 11. I had just wrapped up a meeting for my company, Sterling Properties LLC, and was finally winding down with a glass of wine, trying to quiet my mind. Then the ping of my phone broke the silence. It was from Dad. Alexandra, the family home is being sold. All your stuff will be thrown out. Let me know when you can come pick up anything you want. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment. I blinked, trying to make sense of the words, trying to wrap my head around the bluntness of it all. It wasn't like we were close, but this felt too abrupt, too cold. After everything, after all the years I had spent working in the background, quietly keeping everything together, this was how it ended? I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat back, letting the weight of it all wash over me. The house, my childhood home. The place that had always felt like a burden, a constant reminder of the tension in my family, was going away. The thought of all my old belongings being tossed out just like that felt like the final nail in the coffin of a life I had long since moved on from. But the truth was, I wasn't bothered. I wasn't the little girl who had to ask for my father's approval anymore. The family home, I had already secured it 3 years ago through my company. I wasn't just the daughter who had been kept in the shadows for so long. I wasn't the one they dismissed anymore. I had been building something for myself for years, something no one knew about. I took a deep breath and typed my response. Simple. To the point. Okay. I hit send before I could second guess myself. My father would never know what was coming. Tomorrow, I would be sitting in a business meeting, discussing the future of Sterling Properties while he thought he still had control over everything. It was time to take my place, finally, but that was tomorrow. Tonight? Tonight, I let the glass of wine sit empty as I made plans for the next move. The following morning, after the text from my father, I found myself trying to keep my emotions in check. I had work to do, big meetings, clients to impress. The weight of my father's message, though, still hung over me. I was in the middle of reviewing some files when my phone buzzed again. It was Richard, my realtor. I didn't need to check the caller ID. I knew his voice well enough by now. Alexandra, he said, his voice strained but polite. I wanted to give you a heads up about something. Your father, Robert, is trying to sell the house. I leaned back in my chair, fingers frozen on my laptop's keyboard. He is? I kept my tone neutral, though inside I was already piecing things together. I had known this was coming. Dad was always desperate to get rid of things he couldn't control, and now it was the house's turn. Richard continued. He called me this morning to start the paperwork, but there's a little issue. The property is still registered under Sterling Properties. I've got it all on file, but your father insists he owns it. I just wanted to confirm this with you before we move forward. I didn't flinch. I could hear Richard's uncertainty, his desire to keep the peace. But this was business, my business. Put him on speakerphone, I said, my voice steady. I wasn't going to let my father's bluster throw me off. Not today. A moment later, Richard's voice returned, a touch more formal now. Robert, Alexandra's on the line. There was a slight shift, and then my father's voice came through, raspy with frustration. Alexandra, he said sharp. I don't know what's going on with the paperwork, but I'm not dealing with all this. I need the house sold, and I need it done quickly. You've had your time with it, haven't you? Time for me to make decisions for once. I inhaled slowly, my grip tightening on my phone. He still didn't know that I was the one who'd been quietly taking control of everything for years. Actually, Dad, I said, cutting him off before he could spiral into his usual tirade. The house is already sold. It's registered under Sterling Properties. I own it. There was a long, stunned silence on the other end. Richard's voice crackled in the background, a little too eager to make the situation more comfortable, but I didn't need to smooth things over. It was time for my father to face the truth. What? My father's voice wavered, a mix of disbelief and rising anger. What the hell do you mean you own it? What the hell is Sterling Properties? I let him stew for a moment before responding, calm as ever. Sterling Properties is my company, Dad. I've owned that house for 3 years now. And just to clarify, I also own several other properties in the neighborhood. The phone line went dead silent for a beat. Richard, ever the mediator, hesitated before speaking. Mr. Robert, maybe we should... No, my father barked, cutting him off. No, this is ridiculous. You can't just go around buying things behind my back, Alexandra. Do you understand how important that house is? How much it meant to your mother? To me? Dad, I said softly, pushing the rising frustration back down. I've been taking care of you and Mom for years. I've protected this house, kept it out of foreclosure. You just didn't know about it. You never knew because you never bothered to ask. He was quiet again, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was strained. I never, I didn't know. I never knew any of this. Well, now you do, I said, standing up from my desk and pacing the room. And I'll handle everything from here on out. You don't need to worry about it anymore. I've already taken care of it. Another pause, this one laden with frustration. You always think you can fix everything. You think you're better than me? Better than you? I repeated, a smile creeping to my lips, though I didn't feel any joy in it. No, Dad. I don't think I'm better than you. I just think I'm better at making things work. And that includes protecting this family, whether you appreciate it or not. I heard him take a deep breath on the other end, his voice more resigned now. I don't know what to say to you, Alexandra. Don't worry about it, I replied smoothly. Just focus on what's next. I've got everything under control. And with that, I ended the call. I didn't feel the need to drag it out any longer. My father had always believed that he was the one who held the reins. But the truth was, I had quietly been steering the ship for years. Now it was time for him to realize just how much I had done to protect him and our family, even when he had dismissed me, even when he didn't know it. I was sitting in my office, watching the city skyline from my penthouse, when the phone call came. It was from my father again, this time not through Richard, my realtor. This time, it was him directly. I took a breath and answered, already bracing myself. Dad. Alexandra, he said, the irritation in his voice unmistakable. I want to know what the hell you're doing with this house. You can't just go around buying everything, taking it all and not even telling me. Do you think I'm stupid? I leaned back in my chair, letting the frustration roll over me. There was no need to raise my voice. He was already riled up. I just needed to get through to him. Listen, Dad, I said calmly, the house is mine. I've owned it for 3 years now. I let the silence hang in the air, giving him time to process. The line crackled for a second before he spoke again. What are you talking about? You own the house? That house is mine, not yours. You think you can just take everything from me? Actually, I continued, not just the house. I own several properties in the neighborhood. Everything's been under my name for years. I've been quietly managing the family finances, Dad, even when you didn't know it. I paused, watching the disbelief slowly fill the silence on the other end. I never wanted to make it a big deal. I just did it because I thought it was what needed to be done. He laughed bitterly, as though he couldn't believe what he was hearing. What the hell is this, Alexandra? You've been doing all of this behind my back? You think I wanted this? No, I said, keeping my voice even. You didn't want it, you never did. But it's done now. I've been taking care of things for years, quietly. You don't have to worry about any of it anymore. The anger in his voice flared. You think this is about money? This is about respect? You think you can just come in and take over? What are you doing to me? I paused, my hand tightening around my phone. His frustration was palpable, but now was the time to set things straight. Dad, this has nothing to do with taking anything from you. It's about doing what's right for the family. You've always dismissed me, always thought of me as just a kid who couldn't possibly handle anything. But I did handle it. I've built my business. I've built something bigger than you ever realized. And I did it because I wanted to protect you all, even when you didn't know I was doing it. There was another long silence on the other end. I could almost hear him trying to process what I was saying, but I couldn't wait for him to catch up. It had been too long. You can't just pull this kind of thing on me, Alexandra, he muttered. I've always been the one making the decisions, the one holding everything together, and now you come along and... Now I'm the one making the decisions, I interrupted. And I've been holding things together, even when you didn't acknowledge it, even when you didn't want to. I didn't just buy the house and walk away. I've been keeping it afloat for you. Your business, your debts, the bills you didn't want to face, I handled all of it, because I knew if I didn't, it would all fall apart. He was quiet again, and for the first time in the conversation, I didn't feel the usual guilt bubbling up. I felt empowered. Finally, his voice came through, slower now. So you're telling me, all this time, you were just doing it for us? Yes, Dad, I said firmly. I've always been doing it for us. But you never saw it. You never gave me credit, never once acknowledged what I was doing. You never told me, he muttered, sounding almost defeated. You never said anything. How the hell was I supposed to know? I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. I tried, Dad. Every time I tried to tell you about my business, my projects, you brushed me off. You always told me I wasn't doing enough. I just kept quiet because I knew no matter what I did, you wouldn't see it. There was a long pause, and this time it wasn't just awkward silence. It was the weight of realization, of him finally understanding how much I had been holding back. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower, quieter. I didn't know, Alexandra. I didn't know how much you were doing. I didn't want you to know, Dad, I said, the words soft but resolute. I did it because I wanted to protect this family. But now, there was no more anger in his voice when he spoke again, just a quiet, reluctant acceptance. I I don't know what to say to you. I never thought you'd be the one taking care of things. I never thought you'd become this. I didn't respond right away. There was nothing left to say, nothing he could say either. It was done. It had been done for a long time. Finally, I exhaled and said, You can keep the house, Dad. You can stay there as long as you need to. But I'm in charge now. I've been in charge for a while, and it's time you started seeing me for who I am, not who you thought I was. I hung up, the weight of the conversation settling in. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally seen. And as much as I had hoped for his recognition, I was finally at peace with the fact that I didn't need it. I had expected some resistance, but nothing prepared me for the silence that settled over the table. I sat back in my chair, trying to keep my expression neutral, while my parents stared at me, almost as if they had never really seen me before. It was only now, after everything had been laid bare, that they were finally beginning to grasp the weight of what I had done. The air in the room felt thick with realization. My father, still struggling to process everything, kept glancing between me and my mother, unable to form the right words. My mother, on the other hand, seemed to be slowly piecing it together, her eyes wide, her lips trembling, as if she were seeing the truth for the first time. I let them sit with it. I let the enormity of what I had accomplished settle around us. For years, I had been the quiet force in the background, doing what I could to protect them, to protect our family, yet no one had ever noticed. No one had cared to. My father broke the silence first. But why didn't you tell us, Alexandra? He asked, his voice strained, almost pleading. Why all these years you never said anything? Why didn't you ask for help? I swallowed hard, feeling the lump rise in my throat. You never wanted me to succeed. Every time I tried to talk to you about my business, about my achievements, you dismissed me. You told me I wasn't good enough. You focused on my failures, never once asking about my wins. I tried, Dad. I tried so many times, and every time I was shut down. I could see the flicker of regret in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. I had spent years fighting to prove I was worthy of being heard, but the more I pushed, the further away they pulled. Mom, sitting quietly beside him, shifted in her seat. She glanced at me, then at the floor, clearly struggling to absorb the weight of what I was saying. Her eyes were glassy with tears, though she hadn't yet cried. I could see the guilt in her expression. She had been part of it all, unknowingly perhaps, but still part of the process that had left me fighting alone. Alexandra, she whispered, her voice breaking, I I didn't know. I didn't know you were doing all this for us. The words seemed to catch in her throat, and it was then that I saw the tears starting to well up in her eyes. I had never seen her like this, never seen her break down in front of me. It struck something deep inside of me, a mixture of anger and heartbreak. She had always been there, yes, but how often had I really felt seen? How often had I felt like I was actually part of this family, as anything other than their fixer? I didn't want you to know, I said quietly, my voice low, almost gentle despite the anger simmering inside me. I didn't want you to have to carry the burden of knowing I was covering for you, but I did it because I had to, because frankly, I didn't think anyone else would. My mother finally looked up at me, tears brimming in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Alexandra. We never, we never appreciated you. I didn't see it. I never saw how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed. I thought you were just trying to be everything to everyone, but I never understood why. My father, still silent, seemed to shrink in his seat, unable to meet my eyes. I I thought I was doing what was best for the family. I thought I thought I was the one who had to make the big decisions. Big decisions? I laughed bitterly. You made decisions, sure, but you never listened. You never asked for help when you needed it. You let your pride get in the way. And I watched you struggle, watched you sink deeper, and I just kept fixing it, quietly. And yet, every time I tried to talk about my life, my work, you told me I was wasting my time, told me I wasn't good enough. I see it now, my mother whispered. I see how much you've done for us, and I feel ashamed. So ashamed. I looked at her, my heart aching. You should feel ashamed, but I'm not doing this to make you feel bad. I'm doing this because it's time you saw who I am, not who you thought I was. And it's time you understood the sacrifice I've been making for you all these years, without any recognition. For a moment, no one spoke. The room felt heavy with the weight of everything unsaid, of everything that had been ignored. My father finally looked at me, his expression no longer defensive, but full of a strange, reluctant understanding. How did we miss this? He murmured, his voice thick. How did I miss this? You didn't want to see it, I replied, my voice softer now. You didn't want to admit that your daughter had become everything you never thought I would be, that I was the one who saved the family, that I had the strength and the vision to make it all work, even when you didn't believe in me. My mother reached across the table, her hand trembling as it rested on mine. We're so sorry, Alexandra, she said again, her voice breaking. I don't know how we didn't see it, how I didn't see it. You've been carrying all this weight alone, and I never even knew. I never wanted you to know, I repeated. But now you do. And in that moment, I saw it, the shift. The moment they finally saw me for who I truly was, not who they had always assumed I was. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the invisible one anymore. The dinner had been set up for days, but even as I drove my parents downtown in my sleek black car, I couldn't help but feel the weight of everything we were about to discuss. The sleek lines of the city whizzed by, the cityscape now reflecting the new reality I had carved for myself. My father sat in the passenger seat, glancing out the window, probably processing everything I had told him. My mother, quiet and still, sat behind me, her gaze distant. I could see my father's mind working, his eyes darting from building to building, as the smart city systems, all powered by my company, flickered on and off in the background. He wasn't talking much, but I could feel him starting to piece things together, his realization creeping into his expression. We had just passed one of the systems I had helped implement, a grid that controlled the city's power and water efficiency, and I saw the recognition in his eyes. Is that, he started, his voice more hesitant than usual, is that your system, the one that's been controlling the water and power grids? I nodded, my gaze fixed on the road. That's just one of the systems my company developed. We've been working on transforming the entire city. That system, in particular, saved millions of dollars in utility costs last year alone. His silence told me he was absorbing the scope of what I had done. Finally, he looked at me, his voice barely above a whisper. How long has this been going on? Quite a while, I answered. You just never noticed. The car turned onto a side street and stopped in front of an upscale restaurant. The doorman immediately opened the door, nodding politely as he greeted us. As we made our way through the lobby, I could already feel the shift in atmosphere. The staff recognized me immediately, their eyes widening ever so slightly. My father and mother looked at each other, confused by the attention, but I could tell they were beginning to understand. As we were led to a private table in the back, I caught sight of a few familiar faces. People who had once been in my periphery, people who had now become important players in the city's development. They didn't know me as the quiet daughter they had overlooked for years. They knew me as a businesswoman, as someone who could get things done. And it was clear from the way they looked at me that my role in the city had weight. The moment we sat down, the waitstaff brought us our menus, but my attention was fixed on my parents. Their eyes were wide, their postures stiff with uncertainty. They were still processing everything I had said. As we ordered, I casually mentioned one of the recent government contracts I had secured for a massive smart city project, one worth over $1 billion. I let that sink in as I sipped my wine, watching their reactions. So, Alexandra, my father asked, his tone a little less dismissive than it had been before, you really think you can change a whole city? A whole infrastructure? I smiled, taking another sip of wine. It's already happening. You're just not paying attention. He blinked, leaning back in his chair. My mother, who had been silent up to this point, finally spoke. I don't understand. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you show us any of this? Because you never asked, I said, my voice calm but firm. Every time I tried, you brushed it off. You didn't want to hear it, so I stopped trying. I just did what needed to be done. My mother blinked, looking down at the table. For a moment, I saw something shift in her expression, something like regret, but also something more. We were wrong, Alexandra. We should have paid attention. I nodded, acknowledging her words but saying nothing. This was her moment to understand what had been happening all along, to process the sacrifices I had made for them while they remained ignorant of my achievements. The restaurant's ambient noise filled the silence between us, but I didn't feel the need to fill it with more words. They needed to hear what I had to say, not just for the sake of apology, but for the truth. Then I looked at my father, who still seemed confused, and decided to lay out what had been hidden for so long. You know, Dad, it wasn't just about saving the house or building this empire. It was about quietly protecting you, keeping our family intact even when you didn't see it. When you lost that contract for your company years ago, I was the one who helped you restructure the debts. I helped save your business, and you never even knew it. His face froze. You saved my company? Yes, I said, leaning in slightly. You were too focused on your pride to see it, but when you couldn't keep up, I stepped in. I always have. I could see the moment it hit him, the moment he finally realized how much I had sacrificed, how much I had been doing without any recognition. His eyes softened, and his voice was thick with emotion. Alexandra, I didn't know. I didn't see it. I sat back, letting the silence fill the air for a moment. No one did. It was in this moment, at this table, in this space of soft illumination, that I finally felt something shift. Not just in me, but in them. The recognition, the acknowledgement of who I had become and what I had done to protect them all was finally beginning to sink in. Dinner had ended, and my parents had begun to digest what I had shared with them. The food had been excellent, but it was the conversation that had left the most lasting impact. I could tell they were struggling to absorb the full weight of what I had revealed. My father was still fidgeting with his silverware, occasionally looking at me as if I were a stranger. My mother, on the other hand, had gone silent. Her eyes glazed over as if she was replaying everything in her mind. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was where I'd show them the entirety of my world, where I would make them understand the journey I had taken, one they knew nothing about, one they had never bothered to ask about. It was time to pull back the curtain. Dad, Mom, I began, my voice calm but filled with quiet conviction. I think you both need to understand the full picture of what I've done. It wasn't just the properties or the company. There's so much more. I leaned forward in my seat, my hands folded on the table as I looked at them both. I started from scratch, you know. Stanford was just the beginning. I didn't get where I am by luck or by following the path you envisioned. I worked for every inch of progress I made. My father's brow furrowed, but he remained silent as if waiting for me to continue. I built my first company, the tech startup, I said, nodding slightly as I remembered the early days. It wasn't easy. I worked insane hours, struggled with the balance, learned the hard way about what it meant to fight for your vision, but I made it work. From there, I started expanding into real estate. I didn't just buy properties, I turned neighborhoods around. I created opportunities, saved businesses, even your business, Dad, when you didn't even realize it. My father's gaze snapped to mine at the mention of his business. What do you mean? I never asked you to. I know you didn't. I cut him off gently. But I helped save it. When you were facing that financial crisis and couldn't get the contracts you needed, I stepped in. I restructured the debts. I made sure you had the right contracts, the right support. But you never knew. I didn't want you to. My mother's face softened as she processed the weight of my words. I could see her trying to understand, the realization dawning on her in slow increments. I couldn't tell you because every time I tried, you dismissed it. You told me I was wasting my time, Dad. You never believed in my business, my career. You just thought it was a phase. I continued, my voice steady but edged with emotion. He opened his mouth, but no words came out at first. For a long moment, he just stared at me. My mother shifted uncomfortably, her eyes moving between the two of us. You always told me I was a dreamer, I added quietly. That I would never be good enough, that my business wasn't real. But it was, and it is, and I've been doing all of it for us. I paused, letting my words settle into the quiet of the room. My father shifted in his seat, visibly grappling with the truth of what I had said. Do you know, Mom? I said, my gaze meeting hers now, how many times I sat at this table, trying to explain what I was doing, trying to tell you about the companies I started, about the changes I was making, and each time, you told me to focus on something more important. Her lips trembled, and I could see the tears welling in her eyes. I thought you were just a kid with big dreams, she whispered, barely above a whisper. I exhaled softly, feeling the sting of everything we had been through. I was a kid, yes, but I was also trying to do everything I could to keep us afloat, to keep you safe, to keep you secure, and you didn't even see it. For a long moment, the room was silent. My mother's eyes flickered toward my father, but she said nothing. The weight of my words hung between us, and I could feel them beginning to process everything. The long years of sacrifices I had made, the choices I had quietly made on their behalf. My father finally spoke, his voice almost a whisper, full of regret. I I didn't know. I never saw it, Alexandra. I'm sorry. I should have seen it. I nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of his apology, but it didn't erase the years of dismissal. It's not enough just to say sorry, I said gently. You never asked. You never cared to ask. And that's why I had to do it all on my own. For the first time in my life, my father seemed to truly see me. Not as his daughter who was too emotional or too ambitious, but as a woman who had quietly built an empire in the shadows. As a woman who had protected him and our family while they remained oblivious. And just like that, I realized something else. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally starting to understand. The drive home from the restaurant was quiet. My parents, still processing everything I had revealed, stared out the windows of the car, absorbed in their own thoughts. The city lights flickered past, but I wasn't paying attention to the view. I was still absorbing the weight of the conversation, the first time in years that my parents had truly seen me, not just as their daughter, but as the person I had become. It felt strange to finally share everything with them, to lift the veil on my life, my success, and all the sacrifices I had made quietly without ever asking for anything in return. I had planned this dinner with careful precision. I needed them to see my world, the one they had ignored or worse, dismissed for so long. And now that it was out in the open, I wasn't sure how to feel. There was relief, of course, but a part of me still felt like an outsider in my own family, still unsure if they could ever truly understand what I had gone through. When we reached home, the house felt oddly empty. My mother was the first to break the silence, her voice trembling as she turned toward me in the car. Alexandra, I don't know what to say, she said, her hands wringing nervously in her lap. All these years, I never realized how much you were caring, how much you were doing for us. I looked at her, my heart heavy with both anger and sorrow. I don't know what I was expecting, Mom. Maybe just a little recognition. I worked so hard, and I was barely ever seen. She sighed, her eyes welling up with tears. You were always there, always helping. But I just never understood. I thought we were helping you. I thought you were... Okay. Her voice faltered, and I saw the pain in her eyes. The realization was hitting her hard. She had spent years overlooking the woman I had become, the person who had quietly stepped in and managed things. Family matters, the business, everything, without ever asking for thanks or acknowledgement. I didn't want you to worry, I said, my voice softer now. I didn't want to burden you with what I was doing. But I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd see that I was doing it for all of us. My father, who had been quiet throughout the drive, finally spoke up, his voice low and apologetic. I didn't see it, Alexandra. I didn't see any of it. I thought you were just doing what you do. I thought you were fine. He paused. But I never realized the weight of what you were carrying. None of you did, I whispered. And now I think you're starting to. But you have to understand, this was never about me proving something to you. It was about making sure we were all okay, that the house didn't get sold, that we didn't lose everything, that you didn't have to struggle. My father looked at me then, his face softening. I was wrong, Alexandra. I should have been there for you. We all should have. You didn't know how, I replied, the words tumbling out without thinking. You never asked, Every time I tried to tell you about the success I was having, you dismissed it. Every time I tried to talk about my company, my plans, you just saw it as a phase. Well, it wasn't a phase, and now it's all real. My mother wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. I didn't know you felt so invisible, Alexandra. I didn't realize how much we missed. We were so focused on our own stuff that we didn't see the sacrifices you were making. I didn't see how much you were holding back. The tears that had been threatening to fall for so long finally broke through. I hadn't realized just how much I had been waiting for this moment, for them to see me, to recognize all the things I had quietly done. It wasn't just the money, the property, the companies. It was the emotional toll, the years of being dismissed, of watching them think they were helping me while I silently helped them. You never understood how hard it was for me, I said, the tears in my voice, how much I was giving, and you never even asked. But I did it because I wanted to keep us together. I wanted to make sure that when everything started to fall apart, someone would be there to pick up the pieces. My father's voice cracked as he spoke again, filled with regret. We didn't see it, Alexandra. I didn't see it, and I should have. I nodded slowly, not out of anger, but out of acceptance. It had taken years, but at least now they were beginning to understand. They were finally beginning to see the truth of what I had been doing, quietly and without recognition, all these years. My mother reached across the table, taking my hand in hers, her grip trembling. I am so sorry, sweetheart. I never understood how much you had been carrying. And I know I can't take it all back. But I want to say this. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of everything you've done. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. My father's voice came in a soft murmur, full of regret. You've done more for us than we ever realized. I I just want you to know how proud I am of you too. I should have been there. I should have seen it. The apology, in its own way, felt like the final piece of a puzzle I'd spent my whole life trying to finish. They hadn't just acknowledged my success, they had acknowledged my worth. And in that moment, I finally felt the weight of everything I had silently carried lift off my shoulders. I didn't need you to be proud of me, I said quietly, my voice a little steadier now. I just needed you to see me. The car ride home from the restaurant felt different this time. Quieter, but not in the same heavy way it had before. My parents, while still processing everything I had shared with them, seemed to be in a strange space of realization. My father had stopped asking questions. My mother, though tearful, had ceased apologizing, allowing the truth to sit heavily between us. It wasn't just the weight of my success they were absorbing. It was the realization of what they had missed, the sacrifices I had made to keep them safe, protected, and financially secure, even when they hadn't known. As we pulled up to my house, I could tell they were still grappling with the enormity of everything. I hadn't expected any sudden epiphanies, but the silence had settled in a way that felt different this time. Less of a judgment and more of a quiet understanding. Mom, Dad, I said, breaking the silence, I want to talk about the future. Your future. My mother looked at me with a mix of concern and exhaustion. She wasn't crying anymore, but I could see her eyes were still red. What do you mean, sweetie? She asked, her voice quieter now, like she was afraid of what I might say next. I leaned forward, placing my hands on the table, a gesture that had become almost second nature over the years of doing business. Structured, firm, yet open. I've created a path forward for both of you. I've set up a trust fund. It'll cover the mortgage, the house, all your expenses from here on out. I'm making sure you don't have to worry anymore. You're free to live in the house for as long as you want. The money will come in every month without you having to think about it. My father blinked, stunned into silence for a few moments, his brow furrowing as he processed what I was saying. Wait, so you're saying we won't have to pay a thing anymore? That's right, I said, my voice even. Everything's taken care of. The house is secured. You'll have financial independence, and you won't have to depend on me for everything anymore. I've set it all up so you can live your life however you want. My mother's hand shook as she reached out to touch mine. Alexandra, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. I don't even know how to thank you. You don't need to, I replied. I'm just doing what needs to be done. But I need you to understand. This wasn't about me wanting to prove anything. It was about protecting you, making sure you were safe, making sure the house never fell into someone else's hands. The enormity of what I was saying was beginning to settle into the atmosphere. My parents, who had always seen me as the little girl who needed saving, were now understanding that I had been the one doing the saving all along. I had been the one carrying the weight. And then, Just when I thought I had said everything there was to say, I took a breath and added, "There's something else." My father glanced up, his expression shifting from confusion to curiosity. "What do you mean?" I smiled, though I could see his anxiety rising. "I've just secured a $1.2 billion contract with the state. It's to design a new smart city system, everything from infrastructure to energy systems to transportation. It's going to transform the entire region. My company is going to play a major role in shaping the future of this city. I'm part of something bigger now, Dad, bigger than I ever thought possible." The room went still. My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes were wide, staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. You got that?" he finally stammered. I nodded slowly. "Yes, and it's just the beginning." The silence that followed was thick with disbelief, awe, and something I hadn't expected. Pride. My mother looked at me with wide eyes, still processing everything, but now I saw the respect slowly growing in her gaze. "We've never realized, we've never understood just how much you've done," my father murmured, his voice tinged with awe. I I thought I was the one holding it all together." I felt a small, almost imperceptible shift in the room as my parents processed what I had just revealed. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly standing at the center of this family, not as the one who always had to prove herself, but as someone who had done it. I had built my empire, quietly and without fanfare, and now they were finally seeing it, understanding it, and perhaps, for the first time, respecting me for it. "It's all real now," I said softly, "and I'm not done yet. This contract is just one part of something much bigger. But I want you to know that this city, this future, it's all part of what I've been building. For us, for everyone." My father finally let out a long breath, shaking his head. "You've been working on this for years, haven't you? And all this time, I thought you were just playing around." I looked at him, a mix of sadness and resolve in my eyes. "I've been protecting you, Dad. I've been doing it all along, even when you didn't see it. And now, I want you to see it. I want you to see the future I've been building." There was a long silence after that. My parents sat still, trying to absorb the weight of what I had said. I could see the realization slowly sinking in. How much I had accomplished, how much I had quietly done for them, how I had been carrying the weight of this family for years without their knowledge. I didn't need an apology from them. But as my father finally looked at me, I saw something new in his eyes. Respect, yes, but also a desire to understand, and that, in itself, was enough. The drive home from my parents' house was different. The tension that had filled the air for so long, tension I hadn't even realized I was carrying, had finally begun to dissipate. As I drove through the quiet streets, the weight of the day's revelations settled into me. My parents, for the first time, truly understood who I was, what I had done, and how much I had sacrificed for them. It wasn't just about money or business anymore. It was about the years I had spent quietly protecting them from the edges of their own failures, even when they hadn't seen it. I looked over at my father, who was sitting in the passenger seat, his eyes focused on the road. It was as though he had aged in a matter of hours, his posture slumped, his expression contemplative. For once, there were no excuses, no dismissive words, just silence, filled with understanding and guilt, but also something more, something close to respect. My mother sat quietly in the back seat, her eyes closed, as if she was processing everything at her own pace. I knew she was struggling, but I also knew she had finally seen me, not just as her daughter, but as a woman who had created something for herself, something powerful and lasting. As we neared my penthouse, I felt a ping in my pocket. I pulled over and checked my phone, expecting it to be another email or work-related message. But it wasn't. It was a text from my father. I opened it, my fingers trembling slightly as I read his words. "Thank you, Alexandra. I can't even begin to express how much I appreciate everything you've done for us. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I want to start over, to really understand your work, your life. I'm proud of you, more than you know." I stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling a rush of emotions I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I'd always dreamed of hearing those words from him, but never thought they'd come so late in our lives. Nah. I read the message again, letting it sink in. The door to my penthouse clicked open, but I didn't move. Instead, I let the weight of what had just happened, the years of distance, of misunderstanding, of feeling invisible, sink into me. This was the moment I had waited for. Not the success, not the money, but this acknowledgement that, after all these years, my parents finally saw me for who I truly was. I typed a simple response back to my father, my fingers moving slowly across the screen. Thank you, Dad. I'm glad you finally see me. And I'd love for you to learn more about my work. There's so much to share, so much I've built. Let's start over, together. I hit send and slid the phone into my pocket. The truth was, I didn't need a perfect relationship with my parents. I didn't need their constant approval. But I needed to know that they saw me, not as the child they had written off, but as someone who had fought her way to the top for her family. And now, finally, they saw it. They saw me. I stepped into the elevator and rode up to my penthouse. The city stretched before me, the lights of the skyline flickering like stars. As I entered my apartment, I paused in the doorway, looking out over the city. It was a city I had helped shape, a city I had transformed. It wasn't just the buildings or the infrastructure, it was the people, the lives I had impacted, especially my own family. I sank into the couch and closed my eyes for a moment. The sound of the city below felt oddly distant, almost like it belonged to someone else. And yet, in that moment, it felt like I had finally found a place in it. My place. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from my mother. I hesitated before answering. Hi, Mom. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. Alexandra, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I know I'll never be able to make up for the years I missed, but I want you to know that I love you. I always have. I know, Mom, I said, my voice gentle. I love you too. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just saying it out of obligation or routine. I meant it. I hung up and leaned back, closing my eyes again. My mind replayed the events of the day, the dinner, the revelations, the apologies, the moment I realized that for once I was no longer invisible. I didn't have to prove anything anymore. My success wasn't about showing my family that I was worth their attention. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about quietly protecting them all these years while they judged me. It was about building something real, not just for myself, but for all of us. As I sat in the stillness of my penthouse, I realized that this was just the beginning. A new chapter had begun, not just in my business, but in my relationship with my parents, and I was ready to see where it would lead.